G'day guys, I'm Ant Platter or Platts. Today I'm going to do my interview with the Navy diver. Just quickly, I served 30 years in the military, or 27 sorry, and then 17 of that was within Special Forces. So we're going to have a chat about a few things today and get some good stories out there and have a good conversation. Alright, so my ink, as I say to most people when they talk about their ink, it's very personal, so just find a good artist and you know, run your own flow, whatever you need to do in terms of representing what you want on your body through an expression of a tattoo or ink, I guess. So the first two I got was the traditional Spartan warriors. The commando company group I served with, our emblem was Spartan, so I got the helmet as well, and I got in ancient Greek the words "powerful beyond measure," which is from Theodore Roosevelt's "Man in the Arena" verse, which is a bit of a, I guess, a verse that you know I take strength from. I got the double diamonds, the black double diamonds, which is the commando commando emblem. What we wear in our beret. I guess starting from my hand, working my way up, I got the 3 poppies. The original star I got, and then I added additional stars to it. I wanted to try and get one down further, but my artist Carbine, shout out to Carbine too, he said it wouldn't work, so I just went with the stars. The original star I got there was with an ex-partner, we both got stars, so I sort of changed that slightly. Okay, working my way up, I got the Indian feather on the back of my arm, and I got some coloured beads there. They've sort of faded a little bit, but it's essentially the birthstone colour, those beads of my kids, and ex-relationship as well, in terms of representing their birthstone in colour on my arm. I got the Spartan shield on my forearm there, and the last poppy, or not the last one, but another poppy at the top there. Coming around the back, I've got a compass, which represents direction and, you know, moving forward. And I've also got the lighthouse on the back of my arm there, which again provides light in the direction that you want to move. The top piece, I got the I got the Indian traditional Indian shield and the feather, which is in colour. The fern leaf, which represents new life, you know, moving forward with positivity on the inside of my arm there. Also top of my my forearm. The traditional Indian headdress that the Indian warriors wore, and one of what I only got probably in the last 6 months is the sun sort of coming across the top of my from the back of the Indian traditional headset up on the top of my arm. Bit of sunburn there. Two that are really close to me, I got 079, which is the Commando ECN, written in 0 as in the word, 7 the number, and then the 9, and then a black diamond. And then on the top of my shoulder there, you can see it, is my kids' birth dates, written in that same number as a word. Goes all right. So on my back, on my left side, I've got the SF Warrior with the arrow and the poppies always pointing upwards, as in for forward momentum, or, you know, moving in a new direction. What else have I got? So on my back, I've got the sun, the mountains, and the surf. And then written down the center of my back is the words love, compassion, honesty, kindness, and gratitude. Sort of some key values that I guess I try and follow. Right side, Mount Stromlo, pretty special place to me. So I took a panoramic photo one day, and I wanted to get that represented on my arm in a panoramic I guess, band. So it's a photo taken from the sort of car park area of Mount Stromlo, looking back up towards Mount Stromlo itself, and I've got that on my arm. The band, like, I didn't plan to get a lot of tattoos on my right side. I just wanted to get the sleeve and finish it off on my shoulder piece. So I sort of got the two bands. It was a pretty sort of spur of the moment tattoo I got in Sydney. And those who know, like, straight lines in bands are quite hard to do. So it was, even though it looks like a pretty simple tattoo, it's looks really effective, and to get those straight lines was a lot of work. The two love hearts, the blue and the purple, for my, I guess, relationship, we both got those, I guess, as a symbol of our love. And then the last one I got on my right side is the Australian national flag. As I was saying to Mick yesterday, I've always had a close association with the Australian national flag, being a defence member, and I've got my own flag here at home, which has been on most deployments with me, or I've got a small version I used to carry in my pocket, and we always had a flag either on our chest or on our arm. So I'm passionate about the flag, and I've always wanted to get one as a tattoo, and it sort of fitted nicely there. And then the last thing I found out was that the Australian national flag was first raised on the 3rd of September 1901 in Melbourne in its current form, which is also my birthday, 3rd of September. So yeah, that's my tattoos.
What a story.
I was born in Griffith in New South Wales in 1971. I don't have a lot of childhood memories from Griffith. We left there really early doors, moved to Sydney, obviously with my folks, and settled there. My dad was a chef, well, both my parents are chefs. So Dad was the chef at the Randwick Botany Club there. So yeah, it was just normal childhood, growing up, early days in Sydney. We were there for about 7 years, and then my folks, so I was 7 and my sister was 9 at the time, decided they were going to do a working holiday around Australia. So we went from there to Tasmania and commenced our trip around Australia, I suppose. So school was via correspondence for about 12 months as we travelled, which was fun. We had a lot of time to get outside, swim, fish, get into as much mischief as we could, and then Mum would sort of gather us together for a couple of hours a day, and we'd run through our maths, science, English, all that sort of stuff, and then Mum would send it away and we'd get it back, and so school was pretty relaxed, but because we were travelling, we learnt so much from visiting different tourist spots and meeting different people, different kids from different locations. So it was a bit of an adventure, like early days of my life, I guess you could say, in terms of what shaped me. I've thought about this a lot over the years, and not a great deal of military history in my background. My dad was in the reservists for a while, and my uncle, so whilst we were in Tasmania, but I think the greatest influence was my uncle Don, who is my dad's sister June, married Don. So he's not a blood relative, but he was played a big part in my life early days. Don was an infantryman, and deployed, Malaya, Korea, Borneo, Vietnam, and I really recall early days speaking to Don, when I was in and was in Townsville as a young infantryman, just sitting down with Don and talking about his time as an infantry soldier. He was a company sergeant major with the 3rd Battalion in Vietnam, and some of the stories he would sit down and we'd have conversations about, that sort of inspired me to, I guess, join the military before I'd sort of made that decision. And then John and I had spoke about the next stage on as an infantryman, which was Special Forces selection. So that's where the original inspiration came from. So as a soldier, once you join, you get packed off to Kapooka for recruit training, which is 12 weeks of essentially being screamed at, you know, learning to eat your meals extremely fast because you've got little to no time. They teach you how to shave, and you know, when I got to Kapooka, Jan and Wagga, it was 2 weeks after my 17th birthday, so I wasn't even shaving at this stage, but all of a sudden you've got this cutthroat razor and you've got about 25 seconds to have a shave every morning. So it's essentially 12 weeks of being screamed at, learning all those basic military skills, how to be a soldier, how to shave, how to eat, how to survive, field craft, first aid, weapons. But yeah, the instructors are absolutely brutal. Like, they're screaming at you from 5:55 in the morning until, you know, 21:55 at night when you go to bed. It's just, they're in your face, screaming, spitting all over you. It was a memorable experience, and it's funny because in the brochure for Kapooka, they talk about all the facilities there, like a golf course, a swimming pool, and you know, you never get to see those, you know, facilities because you're going, you know, 18 hours a day for 12 weeks. But as soon as you get off the bus and when you arrive at Kapooka, the instructors are in your face. You know, you're trying to skull drag your suitcase down the road, and everyone else, and they're screaming at you to, you know, left, right, and you're trying to march and skull drag your 20-kilo suitcase down the road. I never figured out why they dropped us up so far away from where we actually had to be. Why didn't they just drop us like straight out the front of the lines where we, you know? But I'm pretty sure they just, must have been you know, the laughing stock. Let's get these guys to skull drag their bags, you know, 100 meters down the road. So yeah, that's Kapooka. It's all the basic stuff as a soldier. From there, I was fortunate enough to get my corps allocation, which was to the Royal Australian Infantry Corps. So we had about a week downtime, and then we were on a bus travelling from Wagga up through Sydney to a place called Singleton in the Hunter Valley, to the School of Infantry, or more commonly known as the School of Cool. That's where all the cool stuff happens as an infantryman. Again, it's 12 weeks there, but it was the middle of winter, so it's bitterly cold, and you know, again, it's the next level up from all those basic skills that you learn at recruit training. More weapons, more first aid, navigation, you know, teamwork, section work. Again, the instructors, my instructor was from the 3rd Battalion, and like he would tear shreds of us. Like, if you did something wrong, or your locker wasn't in line, or if you couldn't recite the role of the infantry, he would just like walk in and tear you on your face, or tear your locker apart, or, you know, throw your weapon out in the mud, so you had to spend the next 3 or 4 hours cleaning this thing. So it's pretty brutal, but you know, as a young 17-year-old, I went from you know, being at home with mum and dad to getting through recruit training to being or qualifying as an infantryman, and I hadn't turned 18 yet. So, you know, I grew up very, very quickly and learnt to survive on my own, I guess. From there, I was posted to the 1st Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, 1RR, the big blue one in Townsville. Again, got to Townsville, still hadn't turned, this was like May, and my 18th birthday was coming up in the September, so I'm still a young kid, experiencing the nightlife of Townsville. As we were talking about earlier, like, Townsville is one of those places, it's such a party town, there's something happening every night in town, or in the city of Townsville, so very easily to get distracted as a young soldier first, you know, into the great lights of Townsville. But you know, there wasn't any deployments at this stage, and there was no Iraq or no Afghanistan. We were essentially in a peacetime army from the last lads pulling out of Vietnam in about 1974 through until 93, when we had that deployment when 1RA went to Somalia. No deployments, so the daily routine was, you know, we trained hard, we went field a lot, you know, jungle training, urban training was just starting to come into flavour, but we spent like months and months and months of the year in the jungle. And then the other fella was sport. battalion, inter-battalion sport or brigade level sport was massive. So that was basically half of Thursday, playing battalion sport. But yeah, brutal times. It's fun to look back and think about the influences. My section commander was Special Forces, which was probably my first. Okay, this is what SF is about. Because he was training up to go and do the SAS selection course in Perth, so he was a big influence on, I guess, my future development in that place. So yeah, we've got Kapooka, Singleton, and then into Townsville. I spent probably the best part of 10 years in Townsville in various jobs, rifleman, and then I did the recon sniper course, which I passed, and then quickly posted to recon platoon, sort of midway through 92. And then obviously the world's focus was pretty much on Somalia and the famine that was taking place in Somalia. So we went on Christmas leave in December of 92, and we're all notified, strangely enough, back then it was via a telegram. So I was on leave in Tennant Creek in the Northern Territory where my folks were at the time, and this telegram arrived saying, your son's to report back to Townsville ASAP, we're about to deploy. So jumped back in the car. Well, actually, I think I flew back to Townsville, and we got ready to deploy to Somalia, which was pretty challenging and sometimes horrific exposures to what was going on there. So I guess skipping forward, sort of mid-90s, really got interested in SF selection, and then 99 was when I initially did my selection to go to Commando Regiment. So I guess in a nutshell, that's where it was at in terms of those couple of steps we spoke about. So it's interesting that we're at the Australian War Memorial today, and I was saying to Mick earlier that when I was suffering really deeply with post-traumatic stress, I couldn't even come to the War Memorial, and I did some progressive exposure training with my psych. So over about a 6-month period, we came here a couple of times, and I'd walk around with Alison, and she'd expose me to different areas like the Afghan area downstairs, because I wanted to be able to come here because it's such a special place for me. But the emotions, and because all the lads that we've lost in Afghanistan, and I guess in fact 102,000 Australians who have sacrificed their lives, I wanted to be able to come here and relax and honour those lads. So over that 6-month period, Alison exposed me to some different stuff, different treatment protocols, and here I am now. I spend a lot of time here, I'm here every fortnight, just either in the gardens or inside, just wandering around, paying my respects, which is amazing, because from where I came from, not being able to come here without the emotions, to now being able to come here and just reflect either in the gardens or going inside and paying my respects. First day in service, obviously we got on the bus, heading off to recruit training. So we got on the bus in Sydney, said farewell to mum and dad, who were there to send me off as a young 17-year-old. And it was that shock of capture upon arriving to recruit training centre. Before you see stuff in America with the drill sergeants, and you think, maybe that's just for the movies, and you're not really exposed to that. But as the bus is pulling into the recruit training centre at Kapooka, you see these burly, big lads, and they look big, they probably weren't, and they're just chomping at the bit to get at us. So I remember I was definitely in the shock of capture. I was like, what have I got myself into here as a young kid? And they're just screaming expletives at us, like even in language where I didn't even understand, because as recruit instructors, they have this where they drop the first and last syllable off a word, and it just comes out as this verbatim, like they're telling you to go, and it just sounds like some foreign language. So there was a massive adjustment there. But day one felt like the longest day of my life.
I bet.
Okay, so operational deployments, Somalia in 92, and then East Timor, 99, Iraq 2003. Oh, sorry, just dialing back, I went to Bougainville, which was like a peacekeeping mission in 98. Skipping forward 2003 into Iraq, and then rolled on through to Afghanistan. My last deployment was in 2009. And a lot of people laugh about this. We left Perth on a Qantas 737 or something like that. Flew through to Diego Garcia. There was like a short stop, which is in the middle of the Indian Ocean, about halfway between Perth and I guess Somalia. The Horn of Africa is a little, not a little bit, it's a strategic sort of American base called Diego Garcia, and lots of stuff happens there. So we flew in there, refueled, and then Qantas basically flew us into Mogadishu. So you can imagine you've got this war-torn country, which is, you know, starvation, there's warlords, it's just, there's no governance, there's no, you know, governing body that rules the nation. So we flew in on our Qantas aircraft into Mogadishu, got off the aircraft, and this strange thing happened. We didn't have our weapons because they're all bundled underneath, and we, you know, shots were fired off in the distance, and everyone's like looking at each other like, well, what do? We haven't got our weapons. So we were quickly ushered into a safe area. The weapons were brought forward, you know, ASAP, and we moved on from there. So yeah, Mogadishu, landing, Qantas aircraft, they got rid of us ASAP, and then got the aircraft back in the sky so they could get to safety. 27 years in the Defence Force, 17 within Special Forces. There's like a whole raft or a list of jobs that I covered off during that period of time. So the initial deployment 1993 to Somalia, I was a forward scout in a recon patrol. Skipping forward to 1998, when I was part of the peace monitoring team that was deployed into Bougainville, where I was in a small team as the Team 2IC. Very closely followed by East Timor, which was 2001, where I was a recon patrol commander, so a senior interior sergeant. Again, skipping forward to Iraq, team commander. You know, we did various jobs in Iraq. It ended up being a little bit of a fizzer, but you know, we did some stuff into Al-Assad airfield, which is still being used by the US as we speak today. And then skipping forward again to deployments to Afghanistan, where my final job was as the company sergeant major, the senior soldier, I guess, in a commando company. I guess my most confronting time was, you know, prior to my time going to Afghanistan, and when I was there, you know, we lost a lot of commando operators, 12 in total through that 2005 to 2014 period in Afghanistan. So I was always challenged by how I was going to react, you know, death and dying, or, you know, a teammate or a soldier who was, you know, in my company or in my team or in my patrol, how that would go down. And I guess, you know, seeing, you know, guys were being killed, you know, from the unit I was serving in, 2 Commando Regiment, and seeing that on the news even before I deployed, it really had an impact on me, and it also had an impact on my family. You know, obviously the risk of me going and not coming home. So it played a big part, and I took some big steps to try and prepare myself, but it's hard to prepare yourself for death and dying when, 1 minute you're operating as a team, or one of your platoons or your call signs, and then someone goes down. It challenged me, and it's probably one of the triggers that caused my post-traumatic stress. So the particular incident was in March 2009 when it was our first operation. We landed in Afghanistan early 2009. The company assembled. We spent about 3 or 4 weeks preparing for this mission, which was a protracted operation down through the Shambrak Valley into the Helmand Valley in Afghanistan, creating disruption for a relief pace that was happening at Fort Bastion. So the Shambrak Valley was known as IED Alley, so we knew we were going to be up against it, and we trained and honed the guys, did hours and hours of drills, SOPs, standard operating procedures on what our actions on were going to be when we came across IEDs or multiple IEDs, or an IED was had exploded, and at what our reaction was going to be. So that was drilled in and covered in great detail in the orders before we left Camp Russell or TK. But I never, going through that process, and then going through the process of, a soldier being killed, two different things. And no matter what I tried to do to prepare myself, it was a really, really challenging time. So we left TK and we're transiting through Mirabad Valley down towards Shambrak Valley. It's like day 3 of operations, and like IED finds were starting to occur. So we're moving at night, basically at walking pace to allow our special operations engineer lads who were on foot, mine detectors, neutralising, marking IEDs, so we could bypass them at night during the day at walking pace. I think we covered about 5 to 7 kilometres in about 36 hours. That's how slow it was, and the threat was so high that you basically never got off your vehicle. We're in Land Rover 110s, SRVs, scout reconnaissance vehicle, and we had 4 or 5 Bushmasters within the company. So the total, there was about 35 to 40 vehicles. So you can imagine everyone's spread out 15 to 20 metres, so we were like this massive signature, massive target, I guess. We'd come across a number of IDs, and the SOA lads, world standard, no issues, went through their drills, neutralised, marked and bypassed the IDs, during the day and the night. So this particular morning we were again moving really slow. We're getting towards the top end of Shambrak Valley at this time, and we get the call that to cease, and the SOA lads are going forward to neutralise an IED. And I'm in the command vehicle with the OC. We've got the JTAC, and we've got the company SIG in the vehicle with us. 3, 4, 5 minutes had passed, and then we got word came over the radio that the IED had been neutralised, and that the SOA lads were going to lift the IED to make sure there was no any sort of other devices in or around that IED. About 30 seconds later, this explosion goes off, and totally took us unaware, because it wasn't our SOP to blow in place. We had no, radio traffic come back at this stage that there was an IED, or the IED was there, but it was neutralised, and they were just conducting further investigation. So to see this explosion was, really shook us, and we were sort of going, okay, what's happening here? And then 30 seconds later, we get from the lead call sign, the Alpha, who's the platoon commander, that there's been a soldier killed in action, which was Brett Till. Yeah, that was a real challenge for me, I guess, as the CSM to deal with that. Sorry. Yeah, Brett was pretty much killed instantly, what he was, but hearing those words over the radio, we've got a friendly call sign, killed in action, was just it was pretty horrific, and it really stung me pretty hard. Trying to, obviously we had our standard operating procedures, and the lads kicked into their drills, but recovering Brett's body was pretty horrific, and the threat was so great that I couldn't even get forward myself to coordinate this. We had to rely on our IED guys to essentially make the area safe and to recover Brett's body. We had a doc with us, and I remember the doc was like, he was in struggle with all as well, and we all were, brave men, the reaction on their faces, and I guess the struggle and the pain we went through to recover Brett's body, to allow him to be repatriated back to Australia. It was a couple of hours, and I probably don't need to go into the detail of what the lads went through, recovering his body, but
challenging time.
Yeah, it was probably one of the hardest days of my life, to be honest. And it still challenges me today, going through with the lads, and obviously we'd got Brett's body ready for repatriation, and we had obviously called for a medical evacuation, and again a very somber moment when we're evacuating Brett out to the helo. And I remember looking over my shoulder, and lads are like arm in arm, and just going through and obviously saying their farewells as Brett was carried out to the helo, and two Black Hawks had landed. We'd secured the area and cleared it as much as we could. But yeah, extremely challenging day, which really set the tone, I guess, for the rest of the operation for me. Yeah, so I guess that was day 3 of a planned sort of 25 to 30 day operation, getting us through Shambrak Valley down into Helmand so we could, conduct our mission. So, getting the lads to refocus, and Dan, who was the senior SOA lad on the ground, the dude deserves every accolade that he received. For him to get his team back together, get refocused, and continue to clear the path of IEDs for us, after essentially they'd lost their 2IC. Every day I take my hat off to Dan and what his lads did. He's spoken about this on different platforms, and for him the motivation was that he had 100 SF commandos behind him who needed to get from A to B so we could do our mission. For him, and all of us, in fact, we just had to switch that emotional channel off and then refocus on the mission. We didn't get time to mourn Brett's loss. And by the time we finished the mission and came out of the field, 27 days later, Brett had already been repatriated back to Australia. So I think a lot of lads struggled with that in terms of not having the opportunity to say their farewells. We tried to facilitate that as much as we could. Prior to the helos arriving to take Brett's body back to TK. Especially the lads in his team, getting to have a couple of moments with Brett. We just didn't get that opportunity because we're in this high threat area. We're coming under tick. We've got spotters, Taliban spotters, who are communicating on their radios, and we knew they were communicating, talking about us, where we were going, where we're heading. So I guess as the CSM, as the senior soldier, trying to convey that message of, we've got to just, refocus, lads, and get on with the job. And, myself and Steve, I was like absolutely struggling myself to deal with this, and I guess me thinking back now, there's things I should have done that I didn't do, because my body was like, I was traumatized from that point with what had happened to Brett, and the recovery we had to go through to get his body back to TK. So yeah, it was like, it's the most extreme I guess it's the most extreme task you can ask another man to do, is to I guess recover his mate from the battlefield like that. So yeah, it was challenging.
That's just extraordinary to think that you have to do that to your brain,
yeah,
and your emotions, to say, right, we've had a couple of days, right, flip to the next. It's just incredible.
Yeah, mate, it's I know subsequent deployments, a lot of the I guess the command group have done a lot of work in terms of preparing their lads for death and dying, one of their teammates in the field, so we can almost desensitize ourselves to post-traumatic stress and how we deal with it. And a good friend of mine, Bram, did that successfully with his platoon. Bram was an alpha going into Afghanistan, but he exposed his lads to a number of scenarios to prepare them to traumatic scenes or scenarios, to try and reduce or protect them from post-traumatic stress. So Bram did a solid job, but testing times as a man, as a human, as a soldier or an SF operator, we're not immune to that stuff. We have emotions and reactions.
It hits close to heart.
It's close to heart, man. You think we're war fighters and we're brave and we'll go above and beyond, but we all have a soft heart. Yeah. I'm going well. We're about to go live this afternoon with some solid conversations. I've got the Kleenex, the tissues ready, and Mick's going to lead the conversation for us.
We're going to talk about PTSD.
Yeah,
What else are we going to talk about?
Love, life, death, and how I found myself in the middle of a Nullarbor plain.
We talked about the depths of your PTSD. Do you mind if we talk about that?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed after my last deployment in 2009 with post-traumatic stress. I sort of recognised the signs in myself coming out of Afghanistan.
How bad were they?
How bad? They were pretty bad, in terms of, looking back at things I did and didn't do on that last deployment, after Brett's death and after, Tomo, Damien was, injured, and trying to manage the welfare of, the lads in my company it was extremely challenging, and I think the biggest challenge for me is, as the senior soldier in the company, I didn't really have another peer I could turn to and say, hey, I'm really struggling here, because I'm the senior soldier, everyone's looking to me. It's not like I can let it out to, one of the team sergeants or whatever, or if I had a better relationship with my boss, perhaps I could have gone there or to one of the other officers in the company. But I felt extremely isolated. And it wasn't until, last or second last day in country before I was heading home with the rest of the lads, I had some time with the task group, Regimental Sergeant Major, the RSM, and we had this light bulb conversation, and he said to me, and we almost said it to each other at the same time, I should have turned to him, and he said to me, I should have engaged with you, because the signs were clearly there that you were isolated, you were suffering from these events that occurred in Afghanistan, which led to being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. So came back to Australia, went to doctor, some specialist appointments, got obviously diagnosed with post-traumatic stress, which at the time, I guess it challenged me, but because my career was still tracking forward, I went from being in a commando company as the company sergeant major into a training warrant officer role. So, I'm in Australia, responsible for training of the regiment in a management supervisor, management type role. But it was during that time I really knew that I was suffering and things weren't good in terms of my headspace and my mental health. My relationship with my ex-wife, now my wife at the time, really suffered. Made some poor decisions, influenced by the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. So yeah, a lot of doctor's visits, and I guess 2011, 12 sort of flashed by. Took up a new role outside of the regiment as the liaison officer in a counter-terrorism function. And then deterioration, I was, wasn't getting better, continued to seek some treatment, trying to get on top of this black dog that sort of sits over your shoulder. And then I was given 12 months medical leave, 2014. And I sort of look back at that 12 months as in, I probably would have been better off without that 12 months of medical leave, because, went into my shell. I couldn't even, motivate myself to get out of bed. It was just, 18, 20 hours a day in bed. I'd get out to eat. My kids would come into my bedroom and they'd say, we're off to school, and I'd say goodbye. And then, I'd hear them come home of an afternoon. I just suffered such mental stress that, there were times where I questioned, who I was, what I'd done, everything I'd done as a soldier, as a man, which, was dark times, and it took a lot of resilience and resolve to sort of drag myself out of that through some really in-depth and intense treatment for post-traumatic stress.
You talk about 12 months off, and it wasn't ideal going through that, but I think the body and the mind has a way of shutting itself down. So I guess the 12 months was torture, but it was also a form of the body trying to rehabilitate itself, and maybe the mind as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I guess on the back of the Brennan report and the mental health crisis that has hit defence, we've lost more lads post-Afghanistan than we lost in the whole time that Australian troops were in Vietnam. So it's pretty significant. You know, we lost just over 500 troops in Vietnam across a number of years. We've already lost that amount through suicide, veteran suicide, post-Afghanistan. So 2014, like the majority of our troops pulled out of Afghanistan. Yeah, veteran suicide is massive. Like, it's way too many. Even one veteran suicide is too many. So it's a real crisis point at the moment in terms of how we manage that, what strategies we need to put in place, resources, funding, education needs to really be sharp. It's the most difficult problem to cross in terms of how do we break that down, how do we provide that veteran with the first response when he's in that dark moment to reach out, or one of his mates reaching in, noticing a characteristic that is not normal within him. So I think from our youngest recruits, we need to educate these guys from day one on the processes of post-traumatic stress, what you're going to go through, the avenues that you can reach out to help yourself or a mate. So resources, investment, education, so that by the time that soldier gets out of the army, 10, 15, 20 years later, he's got those tools in his golf bag that he can pull out and go, you know what, I'm suffering from this is my reaction. So it becomes more of a active reaction rather than reactive in terms of how we look at veteran suicide. I mean, like, you can really drill down on this. It's a really difficult and controversial topic, but we need to get some really strong guidance and leadership, get some think tanks occurring and spit out some data and really lean forward in terms of how we manage this going forward as Australian veterans and current serving military personnel. Dealing with those death and dying moments, or as I sort of preach, taking life, preserving life and saving life, let alone as a soldier, as a human, really tests your mettle on every level. Regardless of the training that we've done, back home in Australia, when you're first faced with that, fight or flight or act or react in terms of death and dying, it challenges everything, every process, every thought. For me, I almost went into self-protection mode and was questioning my own safety, which I had to, most times put aside to portray that confidence to the lads. And I really struggled with that, and I've challenged myself to look back at that, why I guess withdrew into myself to a degree, but as I said, it just challenged me like nothing else. I think my most memorable moment is those significant milestones you hit as a soldier, like marching out from recruit training, qualifying as an infantryman, meeting those, I guess, goals and milestones as an infantry soldier, like finishing the recon course at the time for me was massive, and I was extremely young. I'd only been in the battalion 12 months, and opportunity came to get on the recon course. So I was fast-tracked and front-loaded with information, and it was sink or swim, but they're the memories that I hold closest to my heart. And then there's other things. Well, obviously passing SF selection was probably for me the cornerstone moment. You know, we started selection with you know, X amount of lads, and 19 of us finished at the end of selection, which you know, I remember, and I'm even during or prior to selection and then finishing selection, there's these moments I would visualize, you know, getting that handshake or that beret or that congratulations, you passed selection moment, and you know, what it would feel like, and how proud I was going to be, and you know, I wasn't let down. I was absolutely chuffed and pumped, you know, to pass selection and be in that small group of lads who, you know, went through selection and reinforcement cycle, and get Barry qualified. Was pretty chuffed. I guess the other things is like the promotion, you know, going from private to lance corporal. Again, like being in the 1st battalion, when promotions occurred, you know, the whole battalion, so 1,000 odd men at the boozer, and the CO would call out, you know, and you'd be promoted by, you know, the commanding officer, you know, which for me, you always aspired to that because you were being recognised for your leadership, talent and potential in front of the whole battalion. And promoted by the commanding officer, the CO, the lieutenant colonel, who was, you know, steering the battalion. Yeah, so that was a massive milestone for me. And, you know, I was lucky enough to be promoted by probably one of the most respectful men I came across in my service, a guy by the name of Mark Kelly, who had a long and distinguished career as an officer. You know, finishing his time as the contingent commander for all Australian forces in Afghanistan. And it's funny, I came across Mark at different stages through my career. Like, you know, he was the CO when I was in 1RR, and then there was a long gap where we didn't sort of cross paths. The next time I saw him, I was a warrant officer at the Royal Military College, where our officers, you know, graduate and, you know, spend 18 months, and I came across Mark there. And then a couple of times in the Middle East we crossed paths, and we always had this interaction, and Mark would always greet me with a handshake and a bit of a squeeze, so that was cool. And I still stay in touch with Mark today. He's a good guy. So yeah, promotions, you know, obviously Lance Corporal, you know, Sergeant, and, you know, my last promotion to Warrant Officer was very, very special times. Was there something special I did for good luck? Probably more so in Afghanistan. Like, you know, most of our missions were deliberately planned. There were times where we'd be reactive to targets outside the wire, but so we went through a deliberate planning process. You know, we knew when we were going to roll out, we knew the date, the time, roughly how long we were going out for, coming back, etc. My lucky charm, I didn't really have a lucky charm as such, or a lucky thing I did, but I always enjoyed a hot shower and washing my hair, which sounds a bit strange, but, you know, in Afghanistan, at Russell, you know, hot showers were restricted to like 2 minutes, but I'd always sneak in like a 3.5, 4 minute hot shower before we went out on a job, and, you know, you'd put your fresh cams on, and
Full set of hair.
full set of hair.
Thank you.
Thanks, bro.
I'll clip that out.
So yeah, so there's this guy stitched me up.
I'll take that out.
That's all right. All our missions in Afghanistan were high risk. You know, there was night operations where we'd be flying into targets at night under NVGs. You know, operating in the teams that I was in. You know, multiple times we came under fire. And, you know, I guess for the leadership function, you know, coordinating that piece, and then in going into a defensive role to neutralise any threats that came towards us was, multiple times would occur. Most missions we were getting into TICs, or troops in contact. In some aspects, closer shades than others, I suppose you could say. But that threat, as an SF operator operating in Afghanistan during the day or during the night, the Taliban, we're taking them on in their backyard, so they know the lay of the land, they know where to be, they know where troops have landed in or moved through or from in the past. So very cunning warfighters. So we always had to be switched on 100%, and we never let that guard down.
You told me about an explosion to your neck. Can we elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I guess a really strange experience when I was finishing my time in defence, and found that I was going to be medically discharged with post-traumatic stress. You go through like a medical vet, and everything's done. You get X-rays and CT scans and stuff. And the particular X-ray I had, they identified like a shadow or something in my neck. So further exploration was done, and through a specialist and a subsequent CT scan, which is pretty strange because CT scan works off, there's a lot of magnets involved, and I guess thinking back now, I've got this piece of shrapnel in my neck, which is just under a centimetre long. They found this piece of shrapnel in my neck, and I've never been able to identify when it occurred, how it occurred in Afghanistan. I do recall times, when it was like, did it occur then? I wasn't really sure. So yeah, they were going to take it out. The doctor did some exploration, and it sits about 2.5 centimetres on the right side of my neck. And decision was made through the senior surgeon that it was best to leave it in place. But it always, I guess, makes me wonder like how this piece of shrapnel got there, when it was there. Multiple times you're close to explosions, and there's bits of shrap going off all over the place. So clearly at one time there I caught a piece, and through the adrenaline of the war fighting and the momentum of the battle, sometimes you didn't get downtime 6, 12, 24 hours later. So that's clearly what has occurred with this piece of shrapnel that now lives on my neck.
Not cool for airport screening.
Not cool for airport screening at all. Freaks a lot of people out.
It doesn't go off.
It doesn't go off, but there's always that in the back of my mind, okay, this is going to go off. And like whenever I now go and see a doc, and I had a neck injury not long ago, and I said to them, like, I've got shrapnel in my neck, I can't have a CT scan, or can I have a CT scan? And these operators are absolutely freaking out beside themselves. What do you mean you've got shrapnel in your neck? We can't do a CT scan on you, but I've had one before, my conversation. And they're just like, that is just high risk. We cannot accept that risk.
It's just incredible.
Yeah. I guess there's heaps of them, and there's situations I've been involved in, near death, situation where your troops in contact. Absolutely. I remember on my last deployment to Afghanistan, as the CSAM and the OC, and there's the JTAC and the company SIG, and we had some snipers forward with us. We're in an overwatch position, and one of our call signs was sweeping through the green belt, and the telltale sign of women and children leaving a village was a massive signature sign for us that, okay lads, batten down the hatches, it's about to get funky here. And 100% of the times it did. So from this overwatch position we came under fire some pretty heavy fire was taken on the position. One of the snipers took a round which grazed his ear. We had to evacuate him from that position. So if you can imagine, we're on high ground providing overwatch and commentary for a commando call sign which is about to go into a direct action on a target in the green belt. The green belt is the where the Afghans have channeled water, so it's just like this green strip of land which can be like 500 to a kilometre wide, where they put all their villages so they can work the land, grow their crops, etc. So we're in Overwatch, and then we came under heavy fire that afternoon, and hearing crack thump and trying to provide effective fire. Crack thump is when a round goes over your head or goes close to you, or obviously hits the ground around you. The rounds are very, very, very close. So that's one particular occasion where it was like, okay, this is real. We're doing some funky war fighting here, so batten down the hatches, here we go. We talk about, in those darkest moments of war fighting, what we call black humour, and it's where we're in deep in a mission. Odds could be turning against us. Funny moments that occur. And there's a couple we developed when we're going through the Shambrak Valley, IED Valley, because we're in survival mode, but we've still got to eat, we've still got to go to the toilet. So we had jet boils, which is a gas operated, essentially, I guess, a flask where you can boil water super quick. And so the teamwork would work out. Like, I was the driver and I would have the jet boil between my legs or on the ground in front of me. We're cooking hot water. We're still transiting forward. We're under NVGs. There's an IED threat, but the boys have got to eat. So teamwork occurs where I'm boiling the water. The chook and the JTAC in the back of the car are preparing the packets of food, so that we can add the hot water to, because we've got to sustain ourselves and eat. And the boss, the OC, is obviously coordinating and shifting his troops on the battlefield. So the three of us are coordinating so we can feed each other, feed the boss. He's running the battle as we transit forward. When I explain that to most people, like, they just go, you get these strangest looks. Yeah. Probably another one was, again, like, IEDs, the threat was absolutely massive, and you didn't know as a soldier, as an operator, like, your next foot you were gonna step on a compression plate which was gonna initiate an IED. So minimal time at high threat locations in Afghanistan, you wouldn't even get off your vehicle. Everything you did was on the vehicle. You ate, you cleaned your weapons, you slept if you had to on the vehicle, and obviously you need to go to the toilet. So you do number ones and number twos off the vehicle, which can create some pretty funky angles, as you can imagine. But I can't remember what day it exactly was, but my boss had a little bit of diarrhea. That's probably the easiest way to explain it. So around about every 5 minutes for about 24 hours, my boss is, driving himself out of his seat, dropping his pants, at the rate of 1,000 startled gazelles, and diarrheaing off the front, the side, the back, whatever position he could get himself to without crapping himself.
Talk about a shit fight.
Talk about a shit fight, yeah. So it's moments like that at the time you just go, oh man, like, we are in Struggleville here. The boss is crook, he's crapping everywhere. But you look back and you have a laugh. So yeah, funny moments. Anzac Day, we're in as men, I expect my men to, take life, preserve life, save life. So I'm putting a lot of responsibility onto them. Anzac Day comes around, I want to be able to allow the guys to decompress. The I guess the standard or the direction that was given that 2 beers per man on Anzac Day would happen. From there, I guess through me or the boss with the other alphas, the other platoon commanders and platoon sergeants, some creating accounting would occur, and there'd be like way more than 2 beers per man would happen. But I think I fought for that for the guys because I wanted them to decompress. This is Anzac Day, which has so much tradition around it. Without the guys losing control, we allowed them to have more than their 2 beers, decompress. There was bottles of spirits flowing, but
let off some steam.
We're war fighting. We're taking life. So yeah, we allowed the lads, and then myself and a number of other like NCOs and senior NCOs would go into sort of a protection mode where we knew what was going on. We had little or minimal drinks, so we could go into protection mode and reflect any sort of heat that was coming our way for Anzac Day and into the next day. So 2 beers turns into quite a lot at that time. So obviously particular operation where we lost Brett. The other significant hit we took was young commando by the name of Damien Tomlinson. So about 6 or 7 days after Brett was killed, we were deep in Helmand Valley conducting operations, and Damo's vehicle ran over an IED up on some high ground. Damien was in an extremely bad way. Like, we talk about traumatic injuries. Damien was up to his neck and in an absolute fight for his life. A lot of lads have reflected on that, and the teamwork that occurred that night to get Damien out of the field as fast as we did, and the work that the team medics did, the medic we had with us as well, saved his life, no doubt. Like, he lost both his legs, lost his arm from his elbow obviously down. So he was in dire straits, and so those sorts of incidents occurred through that operation, and I think guys sort of would go into their own sort of protection mode, like because we were in the field. I think there was a certain degree of siege mentality after that. Like, it wasn't about what occurred to Damien through an IED blast, seeking revenge against the Taliban. But I tell you what, there was some sharp focus the next day and the subsequent weeks from that point on. Like, siege mentality, boys being sharp and just executing our plans to the T. We were able to inflict some heavy casualties on the Taliban post that time.
Do you recall what it was like in the days or months after leaving the service and what that felt like for you?
Yeah, I guess for me, I spent my last 3 years as the Special Operations Liaison Officer, working with the Australian Federal Police counter-terrorism portfolio in their headquarters. So I was, relaxed grooming, out of uniform, but knowing I was struggling with post-traumatic stress, so a lot of medical appointments, trying to get some serious counselling, from that, up until that point, I was reporting quite well, and my expectation was to go back to Sydney, to my next role back in the regiment, and then, suffering greatly through post-traumatic stress and, the fatigue type injuries that associated with post-traumatic stress. Essentially, it came down to, I'd served 27 years, 17 or 18 within Special Forces, and then to sit in front of a doctor and to be told, essentially, you're going to be medically discharged because of your severity of your post-traumatic stress. You can no longer provide effective service. That 30 minutes, changed my life. Probably not in the most positive way at the time. Extremely challenging to go from that high-performing, job or jobs I'd done through the 27 years, and then 18 as an SF soldier, to be told your time's up was really challenging, and I struggled with that for a long time, and it was probably only 12 or 18 months ago where I actually felt comfortable in that decision for my own welfare.
What advice would you give to troops who have overcome frontline trauma?
If you've been in those positions and been traumatized, and you've been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress, look, I've been seeing a psychologist for most of my time since 2009, and I still see Alison, my current psych, every 2 weeks now. So you really need to be getting and seeking that professional help to allow you to understand and put practices in place so you don't fall into bad habits, diving deep down into some really dark stuff. Like, get that help, forward lean, look after yourself, be proactive in that space. Don't become that victim of post-traumatic stress. And don't get me wrong, I have in the past, taken on that victim mentality. And it wasn't for me until, I guess, I got to that point where I was just like, you know what, this is not going to shape the rest of my life. I made some life-changing, significantly poor decisions through my relationships and, subsequent relationships since, post-traumatic stress. But whilst there's symptoms that affect that decision-making cycle, break those decisions down, understand them, talk to your psych about them, and really put the spotlight and analyze why you make those poor decisions or have made those poor decisions to lead you to life-changing events. I still look back now and think, what was I thinking? Well, I clearly wasn't, and I regret some really signature decisions that led me to some poor events or conduct. So get on the front foot, get medical help. If you need to self-diagnose, get yourself to a CV doctor, get some help, invest in it, reinvent yourself, find a new hobby, passion, love, whatever it needs to be, but get yourself out of that slump and lean forward, be solution focused, and get on with trying, or not get on with trying, but lead that happy life that you may have had in the past, without sort of deep diving back. There's a lot of friends through that 27 years. I guess the military's your friendships are formed around postings or posting cycles. So, friendships, there's lads I know from, my first or second years in defence, and I still stay in touch with them now. We don't, I don't see them every day, or I don't communicate with them every day, but I know that, in the time of need or the hour of need, if I needed to reach out to these lads, they'd be there in an instant. And I'm the same with them. Like, if someone reached out to me, I'd be there in an instant. And we have this sort of saying that goes under, without saying, I guess, is, 30 seconds and I'm out the door type thing. If you call me, all I need is 30 seconds, my bag will be packed and I'll be, moving to your location to help you out or to chat or whatever needs to be done. So there's really strong friendships that are formed, and they're even stronger when you're faced with adversity, in a combat situation or situations. So deep forged friendships, but not a see you every day type friendship, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I've got campaign medals and obviously unit citations. Never had any sort of significant awards or, I guess, honours. I mean, through CO's awards and like back in the battalion day, not really as an SF soldier. Campaign medals, service medals, long service medal, the CT medal was, I guess, my honours and awards.
Awesome.
I guess, joining the military at such a young age, 2 weeks after my 17th birthday, I'm on the bus to recruit training, and then coming out the other end 27 years later, that extended timing as a Special Forces operator, mate, I multiple deployments, my identity was tied to being an SF operator, and when that's pulled away from you, that rug is like swiftly pulled out from under you, it challenged me more than I ever thought it would. A lot of guys talk about, don't tie your identity to your job, but when you're living, the life of an SF operator, every day is something new. We're doing some, high speed, high risk, great reward, challenging, training, missions, travel, engagement. Everything is just happening at 1,000 miles an hour. We're working, big hours. We're doing some, amazing stuff, engaging with, other countries. They're coming to us, we're going to them. It's just like, it's almost like the rock star lifestyle. And when that's pulled out from under you, it challenges every process, because all in that period of time is military function. This is who I am. And, as an SF soldier, there's very little time to have hobbies, and there's very little time to engage with your family for one of a, for that term. So it's taken from you, and then you've got to almost go, okay, who is Ant Platter? Like, I've got to reinvent myself in my, family, sporting aspirations, mental health, general health. I try not to you don't want to be that military person where your dysfunctional life that's taken away from you, but that certainly occurs for a period of time. Like, you are dysfunctional because you're so used to being in this routine of, training and deployments and professional development courses, repeat. It's like 18 months you're doing this repetition of deployments, training, professional development, and you live that lifestyle of just I know what I need to do when I deploy. I can put the blinkers on, I can just focus on here. There's no need to worry about, home administration. You try and block out what's happening with your family because you don't want that to be a distraction, so you can focus on the job, the missions at hand. You come back, professional development, domestic CT roles, and that cycle continues 18 months at a time. So it's a challenge, being told that your service is no longer required and you've got to, retrain yourself into a new career, or a new avenue or new opportunities, or retrain to stay in defence in a different role. Challenging.
We've got Platts in the room. How are you?
I'm good, man. We've got this conversation going down today. It's going to be powerful and strong. Just a few coffees. We're going to do a bit of training this morning, go to the War Memorial, and then have a chat this afternoon. So stand by.
So this is 21-year-old Platts. Oh, hello. Mrs. Platts.
This is 35-year-old Platts.
Mate, what an amazing 35-year-old.
You have reinvented yourself. And that brings me to my next question. How do you stay fit, and what are some unique training techniques you're applying to achieve this level of fitness?
All right, here we go.
And keeping an eye on your plants.
So, I guess for me, dragging my sorry ass out of bed after 12 months in bed, I just got to a point where I was just like, the only person who's going to change this is myself. I was living in Canberra at the time, and I saw this event on the triathlon calendar, which was called the Triple Triathlon. So it's essentially 3 triathlons back to back. It takes, sort of 12 plus hours to complete, the swim, bike, run, swim, bike, run, swim, bike, run. And it's off-road, so it's on a mountain bike, and you swim in Canberra's 3 lakes and you run over essentially the 3 peaks in Canberra. So it's an endurance event. Some extreme distances are covered, and I was like, you know what? It's January now, this event is in November. I'm going to do this. So that was my, that was my turning point, I think, to get myself out of my bed and moving forward. I guess fast forward November, I've trained, long hours to get myself ready for this triathlon, and I was pretty pumped to finish that day. I think it took me in excess of 12 hours. So you're swimming about 7 Ks over the 3 swim legs. You're biking, I think it's about just under 100 Ks on a mountain bike off-road through the 3 bike legs, and then essentially running a marathon through 3 separate legs through the Triple Triathlon. So some big distances covered. It's not an Ironman, but it's, I guess, the off-road version of the Ironman event. And I managed to do that 2 years in a row. So that got me from my bed, 12 months, to being on the road to, being an endurance athlete. Post that, I did a 24-hour mountain bike race where I finished 3rd, the Scott 24-hour. Again, I think it was this was my first sort of avenue into doing an endurance event supporting the Commando Welfare Trust. So I'd assembled this team of support crew, and my wife at the time, Trina, leading the push. And I had about 12 people from the gym who were coming out through the 12 hours, the 24 hours of the race, and feeding me, motivating me, running beside me as I was coming through transition. and we'd made the point to get one of the sort of the transition areas right on the side of the track, and at the time the world female 24-hour mountain bike champion was a lady by the name of Jess Douglas, and lo and behold, she sets up her crew beside me, and I'm like, I just made the big time, you know, I'm next to a world champion, Jess Douglas, and like talking to her before and after the race, like it was just a great experience for me to be able to rub shoulders with someone like her, who was, you know, she's an absolute legend in the mountain biking scene here in Australia, and in fact around the world. And as I said, I fundraised and was, you know, I guess putting in lights the Commando Welfare Trust, and we managed to raise some coin for the trust, and you know, we had some jerseys made and stuff like that. So just after the 24-hour race, we wanted to do, and I assembled a crew of hard chargers, I guess you could say, because we had this goal of, we'd heard about this endurance ride where they ride from Norseman in Western Australia to Ceduna in South Australia, which is the Nullarbor Plain, for those who don't know it. It's 1,200 kilometres of desert, which is right on the southernmost edge of Australia. You know, extreme terrain, environment, conditions, etc. So we spent about 6 months planning this activity. We got sponsorship, we had vehicles, we had food, water, we had bikes. You know, Woolworths came on board with, you know, food, vouchers and everything. So it was essentially a fully funded trip on a bike from Norseman in WA to Ceduna in South Australia, and we were averaging sort of about 130 k's a day, and then we'd like harbour up at all the fuel stations across the Nullarbor and you know, deservice and refocus on the next day. Again, we raised awareness and coin for the Commando Welfare Trust. By the end of the 18 days we spent on the road, we raised about 35 grand for the Commando Welfare Trust, and we gained some pretty significant coverage. You know, we had, you know, ABC calling us up, wanting interviews with riders. You know, the Prime Minister at the time, Tony Abbott, drafted a letter and, you know, pushed it forward to us after the ride, and, you know, gave us, you know, took his hat off to us and full credit and stuff like that. I think probably two of the most significant events on that ride was so each morning I would get the crew together before the 4 riders, myself and the 3 other lads who rode, and the support crew, and I would read out some words on, you know, one of the lads we'd lost in Afghanistan. So that was really emotional, and, you know, it sort of set the scene for the day and focused everyone, you know, on what we were doing, you know, out here and why we were doing it, you know. So that was a real somber moment every morning where, you know, we'd assemble and I'd go through that. The other thing was we had one of the support crew was a gentleman by the name of Ray Palmer. So Ray had lost his son in Afghanistan in 2010 in a Black Hawk crash, and Scotty was one of my soldiers on my last deployment in my commando company, and we'd sort of built up a rapport, and I got to know Ray when Scotty was repatriated and the funerals were going down and stuff. So to have Ray there with us, it was pretty amazing.
That's cool. What a special moment. Yeah,
it was amazing. Like, you know, he's raised the most unique character you can come across. You know, his love for his son, Scotty, was just, yeah.
And to be there with his fellow troops.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Was just...
the men that knew him best.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. So, yeah, I guess, that took Platts from, being in bed or bedbound with post-traumatic stress and wondering what life was, and, going through those physical endurance challenges, the triple try, two of those, the 24-hour mountain bike race, the ride across the Nullarbor with the 3 other lads, was probably a lifesaver for me, to be honest. Just allowed me to refocus and get in the, get my fitness back and my mental health and my life back online, I guess. And it wasn't long after that, I got into CrossFit, which is funny, like CrossFit originally started as a method of military training, by the SEALs back in, 2003, 2002, circa that time. And the first time I did, went to a CrossFit class, I was addicted. Like, it was just like, wow, I need some of this and I need a lot more of it. So that was...
it shows.
That was January of 2015. I started CrossFit, and I haven't looked back since. I love it. It's, I do it, I train pretty much every day, a couple of recovery days in there a week, but it's my outlet, it's my coping mechanism, and it's allowed me to somewhat, re-establish my identity, not as a CrossFitter, but using fitness as a vehicle to get me back to where I wanted to be as a man, as a person.
That's cool.
I do an endurance event every year since the Murph challenge. I did 30 Murph workouts in 30 days, RX unpartitioned in 2019, which for me was it was massive. Like, Murph is the most challenging endurance event you can do in CrossFit, and it's dedicated to Lieutenant Michael Murphy, who was a Navy SEAL killed in Afghanistan in 2005. So that was his outlet, his body armor, which for me, I'd sort of heard of it, and I spoke to my partner at the time, Yel, and it was like, you know what, I want to do 30 Murphs in a row, RX unpartitioned. And again, to benefit the Commando Welfare Trust, and also with Yo, I decided to also do it for the Leukemia Foundation, because her dad passed with leukemia a while back now. But they were the two charities that we decided to highlight and raise some coin for through the 30 Murph odds. So that was 2019. Last year I did double Murph with a good friend of mine, Scotty, and Jenna, and our support crew. We had Lethal Lee and my son Tane and Hayden got that job done. That was like, so double Murph is obviously 2 Murphs back to back. So 3.4 kilometre run.
Hectic.
Yeah, it's in a 20-pound vest, so 10-pound plate carrier. It's 200 pull-ups, 400 push-ups, 600 air squats, and then back into a 3.2 kilometre run to finish it off. So we did it in just on 2 hours. And again, through a good friend of mine, Hayden, we managed to live stream it on Facebook which we had like 50,000, in excess of 50,000 hits that day. People tuning in from all around the world, watching us do double Murph on the 15th of June, which was 15 years to the day that Lieutenant Michael Murphy was killed in Afghanistan in 2005. So I've done some planning, and like each year I'll do an endurance event. I've got some thoughts in my head about this year, but I'll keep them close hold for the moment.
What advice would you give to our worldwide Navy diver fans, and what's some inspiration you can impart on them that they can apply to their everyday life?
Yeah. What advice can I give? Buy some Navy diver jocks and some swimwear. It's good stuff. And chicks love it. So yeah, get onto that. I think, through my time in the military, and in fact, in life in general, like, we're always faced with challenges, but I guess the difference between someone being successful or being able to manage those challenges is, and I guess it's probably a trait that an SF guy brings, is being solution focused. So as opposed to coming across a problem and dying in the detail or struggling, always be looking for that solution of problem, process it, pull it apart, but then throw some solutions at it. Don't just sit back and go, poor me, or I can't do this, I can't do that for this reason. Just find some solutions, find a way, lean forward to get the job done, and just stay on that momentum of that forward leaning push, that solution focus. The other piece of advice I'd give is, and again, this is for me, was brought to my attention through selection, because when you're on SF selection, there's little to no positive feedback. You don't know how you're going, you don't know how you're progressing, you don't know if you're doing well, you don't know if you're about to be tapped on the shoulder and told you need to withdraw. So develop that internal self positive feedback, and whether you have a number of words to give you that self-positive feedback, or you develop a mantra that when you're in a flat spin or you're challenged by something or someone, you can turn back to that mantra, all those positive words or sentences that you can use and go, things are going to be okay. This is my process. This is how I'm going to get forward. And I mentor some lads who go on selection. I said, okay, develop that positive mantra. So for me, my positive mantra is challenge me. So when I come across a problem or a difficult situation or relationship issues, I'm like, challenge me, lean forward, be solution focused. We always go on about, you can't change the past, you can direct the future, but you've got to live in the now. So forget about the past, you can't change it. You can learn lessons from it, live in the now so you can shape your future.